Good morning. It's off-grid amateur here. Remember, it's an amateur, so I'm not a pro at this, but I've been doing this for a little while, catching rainwater a few seasons, and I've had to modify it over time. But this is where we are in the stage of catching rainwater for all of our drinking water, shower, cooking, cleaning, everything. I catch rainwater off of this roof, which is about 160 square feet, and with that area, every 1 inch of rainfall will harvest about 120 gallons of water. But this is a food grade 40-gallon container. I get the water out of it using this bulk adapter hose bib fitting. This hose travels underground. It will freeze in the wintertime, but I just disconnect this hose, and a lot of times if you can get any water flowing through it, it'll start pulling water through it. And then of course this will freeze as well. But I try to harvest as much water as I can into my storage tanks before the winter time sets in. But it comes off of this roof through this downspout. Got a couple of stones to keep this insect screen pushed down. And as you can see, you got some stones from the roof and a little bit of biomatter, leaves and stuff that fall on it. And really, when you're storing water like this, you want to keep as much of this original biomatter out. That'll keep it clean and make it easier to process down the road. I apologize for the sun to my back, but the morning hours is the best time to film the other part. So catching the water is one thing. I transfer it into a storage tank that allows me to have better control over the condition of the water. So we'll go to that next. Okay, so here we are at the storage container. It's just basically foam. There's no wooden structure. It's wrapped around it. It's sitting directly on the ground to take advantage of some geothermal freeze prevention and keeping the water cool in the summer months. Yellow jacket flying around my face. Anyway, I've got a couple of 7-gallon containers that I'm about to fill and take inside for my water processing. But internally here, I'll run by all the components. So after it's collected in the drum outside, I've got two hoses. This is the hose that pulls from that outdoor drum where the water first goes. And when I want to harvest water out of that, excuse me, I turn this valve to the open position and I close this one. Yellow jackets, it's unbelievable. That water siphons through here into this pump, which is just a typical pump you can get at most farm stores, and runs through fittings into this 5-micron water filter. It's basically a sediment filter, and these are the filters that come with it to extend the life of these filters, because usually it's the surface that gets clogged. So I'll just hit this with a low pressure wash to wash off that surface, and then I can reuse it and continue processing it, because I do have other stages of filtration. So this isn't really critical that it be perfect and intact. It just gets some of the larger debris out of the system. So once it's pumped into this storage tank, I keep an aquarium style air stone in there, and what that is doing is it's keeping this water in this tank constantly moving. Any water that is sitting stagnant for a while begins to pick up an odor. So adding the air to this tank, and this isn't completely airtight of course, but it keeps the bugs and stuff from getting inside. So keeping this water moving inside this tank, it's really critical. And occasionally when the tank is full, you can see the water line right there, it's almost full right now. I keep these tablets in here, and these are just bleach tablets, concentrated bleach tablets. So, every now and again when I'm just wanting to make sure that before I get into a season that this water is going to be sitting here a while, I just drop in one bleach tablet, and with the air stone, it's going to kill off any bacteria that's inside the tank, but also over time that dissipates, and the further parts of my filtration process will take any of that residual chlorine out. So you don't get any of that chlorine smell, you don't get that chlorine taste. But when I'm ready to harvest water out of this 275-gallon tote and get it into these containers, I close this valve, which is the rain catchment drum, and then of course I open this valve, and this draws its water directly out of the tank. There's a fitting back here on this lid, and it draws the water out of this tank so that I can pull this quick connect fitting off of here and put it inside this tank. And these two 7-gallon tanks weigh about 56 pounds when they're full, and I carry those inside for the other 3 stages of filtration. But as far as how I turn that pump off and on, I've got a switch that's plugged into this triple tap outlet. One of it powers the pump, The other one delivers power to this water transfer pump. You can hear that. I'll shut that off for now because, you know, you just don't want that racket. And then, of course, this third block right here is actually one of those thermo cubes. And basically what it does is it provides energy based on temperature. So it's got a built-in switch that's thermostatically controlled. So I'll take a little 200-watt space heater that doesn't have a thermostat. I mean, these things are so small, and they're basically sold to people that work at like a desk or office. They get cold feet, and they want to have a little bit of a heat source under their desk that isn't high demand. And I plug it into this thermo cube, so it's automatically turned off and on. And I just suspend it down in this cavity right here. So in the winter months, when it gets down to 32 degrees inside this container, boy, the bees are really picking up. Either way, hold on, I got to pause. Sorry about that. All of a sudden, the yellow jacket population around here is really spiked, so I'm dealing with that. But that thermo cube that you can see in the distance controls that heater, and it cycles off and on. It kicks on at 32 degrees and shuts off at 45. So the tank itself, because the water's moving, really isn't much of a problem as far as freezing goes, because it takes a long time for this volume of water to freeze. The parts that are going to freeze that I'm concerned about are the plumbing components, the hoses, the things that contain very little water. So using that heater prevents that water from freezing throughout the winter. Never really had a problem with it freezing because of that heater, and transfer into these containers. So to see how I process that water inside the house, go ahead and just click on some of the other videos in my lineup, and you'll see that you know, I've got several other stages of filtration that make sure that water is safe for us to drink, filtering out any pathogens or even any chemicals. Okay, that's the hose squeaking as it cools down on this foam. But I hope this gives you some ideas. Just examine the components. If you're trying to build something like this, you can copy this design, obviously, and nothing like this is anybody's own personal rights to it. But this is how I've set it up. I hope that this helps you set up your off-grid rain catchment system so that you can make sure that your water is safe to drink as well. This is Off-Grid Amateur signing off. And of course, if you get a chance, check out some other videos on the fire pit. So if you live on a homestead, you really like sitting around a fire, these fire pits are really cool because they're made from upcycled material, 55-gallon drums and 5-gallon buckets that are steel. And because they're made out of that material, my material costs are super low, so I can hit price points that the other companies can't because of my material costs. So again, rundown here, the switch that controls the pump, the thermo cube that controls the heater, keeping a supply of these chlorine tabs just for occasional sanitization of this water. The air pump keeps the water moving. That also makes the water healthier. And then when this tank is full, when I get too much water in this tank, I've got this other tank over here. It's a mess, but I keep that right next to it so I can transfer water into that, the excess. And that allows me to use that Ryobi pressure washer. It's always hooked up, so I can always use that pressure washer to wash off things around the house. But in the winter months, this can freeze, but I have been known to open it up, chop open the ice, and siphon water out of there and push it into here to get me through an extended period of cold weather. So if you have any questions or comments or anything you want to know more about it, just put them in the comments section and I'll try to get back to you. I know this video has ran long, so signing off.